I just want to ask, because I know you want to tell us what rehabilitation is, but why do you want us to know what rehabilitation is?
Because I want you to know that change is possible. I want you to know that the only constant in the universe is change. Every day, every second, something is changing, something is turning over, something is becoming something other than what it was. And to think that we as a society cannot do that, that we're locked. Those are thought processes that were into play for centuries prior to now. When it took 1,000 years for one seed of evolution to pop up. And the way things are happening today,
Madness.
Unbelievable. So this was the 1960s, and for so long it had been like this. And all of a sudden, as I said, the music is different, the art is different. There were different movements, abolitionist movements, Black Power movement, the Women's Lib movement, first understandings of what it meant to be different, queer, LGBT, gay rights. Because before then, they had been shunned. Now people say, no, I'm standing up for my rights. We were in Vietnam at the time. We were fighting a war. No, we were fighting. It wasn't considered a war because it was an undeclared excursion. But we had brothers and sisters over in Vietnam that were dying in the thousands every day. And with the changes that were happening culturally, in the media, technology, for the first time, we were able to see this on television 24 hours a day.
In prison, you were starting. Is that what?
No. This is before I went to prison.
Before you went to prison.
I was home then when all this was happening.
Yeah.
You know, I was 16, 17, 18 years old, and there was change happening everywhere. There were movements developing everywhere. A lot of you guys have heard of the Black Panthers as a black nationalist organization. But long before the Panthers, there were other organizations, Seminole Liberation Army, the Black Liberation Army, Revolutionary Action Movement. That's who we were in Philadelphia. And what was our goal? Our goal was to take charge of our communities. Stop people robbing, stealing. There was no drug epidemic at this time. And imagine what I'm saying. In the United States of America, in the early 1960s, there was no drug epidemic. Wait a minute, we look at all the movies, it's all we see the dope fiends, the drug addicts everywhere. That hadn't happened yet. And when it did happen, years later, we were able to go through information, documents that was put out by the government itself that says a lot of this was planned reaction to what was happening in the communities. Because you had people that were standing up now. You had women that were standing up, said, I'm not going to take this anymore. You had gay folk that were standing up saying, I'm not going to take this anymore. You had what we call flower children, which were basically pacifist folk, mild-mannered, that did not want us to be in a war. He says, I'm tearing my draft card up. I'm not going to fight. And you had the Black Power movement. So you had all of these movements that were occurring and happening. And the government, the system said, how do we deal with this? How do we handle this? So slowly but surely we started to see something happening, which was a response to that. And it was the birth and the growth of the prison industrial complex. From those 7, 8 prisons in Pennsylvania, and the same thing held true across the nation, there was an explosion of building prisons. For what?
Okay, so you're painting the backdrop. You're saying, here's what's happening in the U.S. The uprisings are happening. People are not standing for status quo anymore.
Indeed.
And so the response to keep us in line is the burst of the prison industrial complex. Wait, can I just really quickly ask? Because everyone,
you want.
I feel like a lot of people in here know about the prison industrial complex a bit, but they always want to ask a little bit more about, wait, tell me what's private. Tell me what's state funded versus when it's private. How many of those? Wasn't it just a money grab?
When I mentioned the prison industrial complex, I'm putting it in a different light. Now, it's no longer just prisons, just penitentiaries, just jails. This is a business. This is something that now has a place on Wall Street. This is something that now means a source of income for a lot of folk. This is something that now means politicians are getting involved in who has prisons, where prisons are, how they're built, what area they're built in. And if you notice, there are very few, if any, penitentiaries in the cities. They're all scattered out in the rural areas. Why? To give jobs to those folk.
Yeah. How far away, if you don't mind sharing, how far away from where we're at right now was the prison that you spent the most time in?
Oh, well,
Speaking of how it's not in a city, right? State College is not a very big city. The most time.
I was in Graterford Prison, which is in Montgomery County, most dangerous and dastardly prison in the state. 50-foot walls all the way around it. More deaths of staff, of inmate than any other place in the state. I was there for 26 years. I was transferred from there to Rockview, which is 7 minutes away from here.
8 miles.
Right down the road.
Yeah.
And I was there for 26 years. That's why I said, wait a minute, did I spent the most at? Nah. And I don't know how or why that turned out that way. 26 there, 26 here.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah.
And when I was transferred from Graterford, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was fighting tooth and nail because they came with the governor's task force and state troopers and paramilitary folk and said, we're taking control of this jail back. I had been an organizer and a leader of inmate organizations for at least 20 of those years. So I wasn't part of what they call the part of the jail that they had to take back. That wasn't who I was. I was totally, I had a different mindset. I was involved in education. I wanted to get brothers involved in school and learning. I wanted to bring more programs into the institution so that these guys, the 95% of the guys that were going home, which meant they were going back home to my community mostly, they could go back home and not be predators,
and have
not
jobs.
be the ones like they were when they got there.
Yeah.
They have marketable skills. They have more awareness and knowledge of who they were as individuals and people.
That's why, sorry, I don't mean to be too sentimental, but I just want to be like, that's why I love you. It's because you really do have a heart and a vision for people rehabilitating, and not for just the individual who did a crime, presumably. You have a vision for society. You're talking about once people rehabilitate, they're out and they are part of society in a way that feeds them and is for the good for greater people.
Sure.
But you know what? I think people online they keep wondering because I don't really want to ask this, but I feel like I just want to honor it.
Ask that question. Is it about transformation?
It's transformation and seg.
Transformation and what?
I think people want to know about solitary confinement, and they want to know if your transformation happened in. Yeah.
Well, transformation can indeed happen in solitary confinement. Let me define what solitary confinement is. You're in jail. You're in the penitentiary. You're in a place of punishment. Yet there are people even there who act up. People hurt people in there because hurt people hurt people. And it's a concentrated environment.
Sorry, you just said hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And so a hurt person, you have to picture, Irv really wants us to picture a hurt person in solitary confinement. Okay.
So, what do they do with a person who hurts another person in jail? It's okay, we give you more time or add to your sentence. No, they put them in what's called the hole. Everybody in here, for the most part, understands and knows what the hole is. Is there anyone in here who does not know what the hole is? Or segregation? Or isolation? So, it's a place that's designated as the jail within a jail. You're in prison, but we're going to put you in jail. But I'm in jail. We're going to put you in jail in here. Okay, well, what is this? It's a cell just like the one you left. So what do you mean? But there's no bed. No bed? What do I sleep on? Oh, we got a mattress for you. The mattress is on the floor. Take your clothes off. Keep your drawers. Keep your undershirt. Take your socks, your shoes, all that. Give me that. And take all that. Put it out there.
So you're humiliated. So you're transferred. You're humiliated. You take off even more dignity.
Yes.
You have to take off the clothes that you had.
Yes.
And then you're in the hole.
Stuck in this room with nothing. You have the toilet, your mattress, and you. This is where they continue to give you 2 pieces of bread and a cup of black coffee for breakfast. When lunchtime came, they brought you a little tray, shoved that through the slot, and you ate your little lunch. Meager, very meager. It was called Heart Healthy, utilizing portion control. So we're doing this for your benefit. We don't want you getting fat in here. So, and at night, at 5 o'clock, slide open again, and they push through, what do you think it is? 2 pieces of bread and a cup of black coffee. That's your supper. Every single day. Every day. 6 in the morning, 12 o'clock, 5 at night. And once they gave you that last meal, quote unquote, they shut the slot, put a double lock on the door. There were 2 locks on it, locked both of them, and then slid a huge wooden door on rollers that was on the outside of that cell door. Boom! And he locked that.
And that's where transformation comes in.
Well,
no, I don't mean to be funny, but like really, that's...
I know. But the question is, you did not want to go to the hole in the wintertime because at 4:30, it was 4 o'clock sometimes, it got dark outside. There was a window that was up. You couldn't just look at it, but it cast a light in your cell. And you were able to look at that light all day long until it got dark. Now, once it got dark, there was very little to see. But once they put that wooden door across, which shut out all of the light filtering in from the lights in the corridor, you could not even see your hand in front of your face like this. That's at 5 o'clock in the evening until the next morning. So what do you do? What do you do as a young man sitting in there on the mattress, almost naked? What do you do? A couple of things. I'm going to get to 2 of the most extreme. You can either go insane, which a lot of people did, one way or another, one form or another, begin to deviate from what was normal reality. And they come out and you know that they were different. Or you underwent the beginnings of transformation. And I'm so glad that we as human beings have been equipped with that ability to go into ourselves and wrestle with the both parts of who we are. Because there's a duality in every one of us. We're not defined by the worst mistakes, or we shouldn't be defined by the worst mistakes of our existence. And there's also part of us that could reach. I don't know if you believe in a higher spirit. I do. I don't know if you believe in the designer of the universe, but I say this is not an accident.
And Uncle Irv, okay, so we talked about how transformation could happen in solitary confinement. That's not necessarily your story.
No.
But we are responding to what some are wondering from online. And we only have like a couple more minutes, and I did want to get to this one
We only
question.
have a couple more minutes to this entire session?
So I do want to get to his question really quick, and then I'm going to transition us just to talk a little bit about atonement.
You guys can talk.
Thank you.
I'm telling.
Ern, I think you are the perfect person to ask because one, you are a community leader. You have been in your past, and two, you have been rehabilitated. So I gotta ask, you already know, like, you can't simply tell somebody a concept and expect them to see it the same way you see it. They have to experience it for themselves to understand it. Now, you have these people who grow up in certain conditions and they see this certain view of the world and they think that there is no rehabilitation or this and that. But as a community leader, like, how do you start to, how do we as a society systematically shift the mindset to rehabilitate the people?
You're saying you believe most people out there don't believe in rehabilitation because they haven't experienced a need for it.
I don't want to say don't believe in rehabilitation, but a lot of people don't work for it. A lot of people go into jail and then they get beat and then they come out and then they want to be somebody else because that's just a transfer of energy. That's how it goes. And they don't see that rehabilitation is an option for them. It's just a cycle. Or redemption.
Or
it's
redemption.
Just a cycle.
Well, the first thing you have to do.
Okay, thank you for that.
First thing you have to do is define or redefine what rehabilitation is. It's not something that's specifically isolated to carceral environments. A person can rehabilitate themselves out here in the face of trauma, in the face of climactic experiences. A person can say, oh, wait a minute. Because what does rehabilitation mean? To redo who and what you are. And in some instances, and I already talked about that duality that's in all of us, is to reclaim that portion of you that you know is, and I know this is cliche, to say there's a good angel over here and there's a little red devil over here, or little devil, I'm not going to say red, there's a little devil over here. But the two natures of human beings are real, as far as I'm concerned. And it's who we listen to. What we decide is going to be who we are. This can go a lot of ways. As DJ said, this didn't necessarily happen for me in the whole, but it started in the whole because I said, wait a minute, I have to make some changes. I said, I can handle this because I'm handling this, but I don't want to. You know, I mean, I know I'm in jail, I know I'm in prison, but I'd rather be out in the larger prison than be in this crap. So, what do I do? That was the first beginnings of the thought of transformation, of transforming myself. And
would you say you were atoning? When you were in solitary confinement and you were in that position, and you weren't acting out, you weren't flooding the toilet, were you atoning for doing
again,
wrong?
remember I said the act that I was involved in that cost a person his life was an unintended action, something I did not intend for it to happen. I did not mean for this to happen. I did not want this to happen, but it happened. It happened. And I understood that. From that very moment,
You were atoning.
I said, I have to do something. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I says, I have to do something to make sure that does not happen in my life ever again. Now, I maintained that mindset for a while.
You were experiencing redemption the moment you didn't want it to happen, regardless of the court system.
Why? Because I am a human being. I'm a human being. I'm from the hood. I'm from North Philadelphia. We were rough. We were tough. We were gang worn. But I am still a human being. And my life doesn't, yes, my life did not, I do too. My life did not revolve around the pain and anguish caused someone else.
Okay, so we're coming back into redemption and atonement.
So, from the moment that happened, and for the rest of my life, I was making amends. I was atoning. I was doing what? I was becoming part of what you guys have read about philosophically and politically, part of the social contract. And what does that mean? None of us live in a vacuum. We're not located somewhere in space, just hanging there, just no top, no bottom, no size to grab, just there. That's not us. We live in a society amongst other human beings. Now, even though we don't necessarily sign a contract and says, I'm supposed to act this way, we understand that. We know that there are certain ways that we are supposed to act. We're taught this from our first socialization beginnings in the home. The difference between right and wrong. How to do something good. What's good and what's bad. We're taught this. We know this. So when something monumental like the loss of a life happens, or even something not as monumental as that, when someone is hurt, psychologically, emotionally, however, and you're the cause of it, do you feel overjoyed about that? No, I don't think so. I don't think so, even though there are some of us who do. Some of us who are sociopathic in that sense, which is why, again, I don't necessarily believe that we should raise all prisons to the ground today, because we need places for those folk to be able to experience rehabilitation, to be able to experience redemption, to be able to experience transformation. And it doesn't necessarily always have to happen in prison. Of course not.
But we already created a system where many, many people are in those prisons.
But it doesn't, sure, yes they are. Mm-hmm. And if what we did in those places as policy and practice supported that and nurtured that and maintained that, I say, oh.
That's how you're saying, that. I'm supporting you. I'm saying, that's why you're saying we can't just burn it to the ground.
No,
it took
we can't.
your whole time in there. What's your question?
So I had a question about, like, before you went into prison, right? Like, the trajectory that you were kind of on with your life path, like your path and your choices that you were making, if not have gone to prisons, do you feel like you would have made that growth in your life overall and kind of like gotten to the point where you are now, like with your mentality on everything?
I like to think that being the person that I am, I would not necessarily have needed prisons to find and transform and become who I am today. Because what happened to me in prison can happen to people out here. I found saints and angels and sages and guides and mentors and griots in prison. I found those of us who were willing to take a young man's hand and put him on what they thought was the correct kind of path. And that path being, first and foremost, education. Education, doing what you're doing here, doing what you do every day. And then education of not only the academics or the vocationals, but intrinsic, autonomous education. Learning, and I don't recall who this philosopher was, but over 2,500 years where he says, an axiom. Well, what is this axiom? Know thyself. Know thyself. Know who you are. Know what you're capable of. Know your strengths. Know your weaknesses. Again, I go back to the point, we all make mistakes. Know that you are not a part and product of the worst mistake you ever made. That duality. I elected to walk a certain path. I could have gone this way with a lot of my buddies, who still wanted to be gangsters and hoodlums and what have you. But I says, no, I'm not going to do that. First and foremost, I began to recognize that there was a debt I had as a member, and I adhere to the contract that says to live amongst human beings, act like a human being. I mean, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is so simplistic.
Yeah.
I would rather smile and laugh, sing some songs or dance than to fight. And I come from a city of prize fighters. But I have preferences. I'd rather make people happy than sad. If I make people cry, it's going to be crying tears of joy. And I tend to do that a bit. I even do something that I thought I would never do. I cry myself. Because for decades and decades and decades and decades, I didn't shed a tear, only not because I didn't want to, but because I could not. Not in that environment. I couldn't hug another brother, which is, I'm a hugger down. I hug everybody. If people meet me, they know Irvin's going to hug you. Because in there, I couldn't do it. So, again, I like to think I would have transformed and become my better self, even under less egregious conditions. But again, we cannot do this by ourselves. One thing, I talk a lot to people, and I write a lot as well.
This is going to be your final wisdom.
Okay, I write a lot as well. One thing I always admonish my readers and the people I talk to do, because everyone wants to be blessed, don't we? Don't we want to be blessed?
Mm-hmm. I want good things.
Don't we all want to be blessed? So I say, in order to guarantee that blessing, be a blessing. Be one.
Be
one yourself.